Joe Rogan and Candace Owens bring down the felon? Let's look into that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Thank you for liking, watching, commenting on the videos, sharing the videos, hitting that thumbs up button, and subscribing really goes a long way to help this channel grow. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So it appears that MAGA is not really being quiet about this Epstein files. Rogan showed videos of Trump hanging out with Epstein and talked about them on his podcast. And when I was scrying, I don't think this is going away. I think Candace Owens is going to be somebody else who stays on top of this. Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, Thomas Massie in the House. But do they just stay on this until everything is released? So some grand jury testimony is going to be released or was released. The Virgin Islands released some information today showing that Jeffrey Epstein's, one of his victims tried to swim from his island to another island, and they went on the seas and basically threatened to restrain her, which is kidnapping in my book. I don't want to get too much into those energies. We all know how icky they are. But, is this essentially going to bring him down? I want to look at that. The Supreme Court decided to hear the birthright citizenship case. A lot of people are disturbed by this, and maybe so. Let's take a look. I don't think it's going to go the way that people think so, but we'll look. Nancy Mace, is she going to retire before her term is up? Of course, she's running for governor of South Carolina. It seems like a bad move to resign early. And then let's just, in general, I forgot to mention this. Let's just take a look and see, is there more damning stuff on the felon coming out in the Epstein files soon? And by coming out, I mean from the DOJ. He lit the Christmas tree and slurred his way through a speech. So his third speech is worsening. I want to look at that as well. I want to look at, is this making him mad that people are talking about his cognitive decline? I want to look at that. And then lastly, I think we need to look at his health over the weekend through maybe Monday. We don't normally narrow things down to a very specific time frame like that, but it feels like it's right. So let's do that. Let's start with birthright citizenship. So what do we need to know? So the Supreme Court is heard to hear this case on his executive action that aimed to end birthright citizenship. Of course, it's currently on pause, meaning it's not enforceable. So what are the possibilities here, as at least as I understand it, is they could rule his executive action is legal and that he could end birthright citizenship. Of course, this means that the next president could just end his executive action and reinstate birthright citizenship. That's one possibility. They could say, well, his executive action can't apply to everybody born in the U.S., but it can apply to those born in the U.S. Whose parents are here without proper legal papers. And again, where do you stop there? How far retroactively do you go? That's one thought. Or they could just say, hey, you can't do this. And I think that's what's going to happen, but let's see. I actually think the liberals probably voted to hear this case along with Alito or Thomas, one of them, knowing that where everybody stood. I feel like it'll be an excuse me. I feel like it'll be an 8-1 type decision to to strike down his executive action. But I mean, it's pretty clearly written in the Constitution that, former enslaved people and people born in the U.S. are to be considered citizens. Now, you can question whether that's wise or not, but I think it's a hard argument to make that that's not what the intent was. So let's just see, what do we need to know about this? Yeah, I keep seeing the 5 of Cups in the water, which is about loss. And I think this is loss for the administration. Actually, not sure that we've had a poll on what the populace thinks of this. This country's civics knowledge is so poor that, I'm not sure people understand that a person born in the U.S. is a citizen, regardless of whether their parents are. We get justice, balance. I think that's exactly what this is. I think this is a way of striking down this idea that you're above the Constitution. So an executive order trumps the Constitution, no pun intended. Doesn't make much sense to me, but the Supreme Court's done crazier things. But all in all, they don't always rule in his favor. That's a misnomer. Excuse me. A little catch in my throat. The 8 of Wands, I think this decision will actually be quite quick. Yes, they'll be fighting about it. We'll hear oral arguments. We'll have a good idea of what they're going to do after the oral arguments. The oral arguments before on this led them to say district courts can't impose nationwide injunctions. They didn't actually decide it on its merits because they didn't want to. And that tells me that there's probably 8 justices that are against this, 1 for it. The 3 liberals and the 1 for it voted to take the case so that they can put it firmly into law that birthright citizenship is a right. That's what it feels like. I could be wrong, of course. These are just tarot readings and they're for your entertainment, so take it as you want. The 4 of Swords here, ill health. I think more importantly for here, it's bad logic, right? The executive order is just bad logic. It doesn't make any sense. It's like all of a sudden, a Democratic president's going to get in there and write an executive action banning all weapons, basically nullifying the Second Amendment. They wouldn't allow that. I just don't see them. If they were to do it, I think it's the end of all credibility. I think the district courts below them start to issue rulings that are in opposition to their bigger rulings, and they're in just big trouble. Bombshells and surprises. I think the surprise here is that they actually do the right thing. The Page of Swords, the spy in the camp. Again, I think 5 of the justices probably didn't want to hear this case. We shall see. The 3 of Swords, betrayal. I think 0 Trump or felon-appointed Supreme Court justices will rule in his favor. I don't think he'll get one of them. I think the only one that might rule in his favor is either Alito or Thomas. I'm not sure which, but I don't think it's both. That's my guess. The 7 of Pentacles, planting seeds. They already kind of did that. If you go back and you listen to the oral arguments, Kavanaugh, no big fan, by the way, just to be very clear, I mean, he said it right. What are we going to do? Require hospitals to check documentation before issuing birth certificates? I mean, this is only going to raise healthcare costs. It's not this huge problem that everybody thinks it is. So, I mean, I don't know. I think the seeds have already been planted. I think they will come down in a quite moderate way. I think they're just taking this to kind of put an end to some executive actions. I think the case has already been decided. That's the bombshell. And I think it's basically, no, you can't do this. Of course, he's going to feel betrayed by the surprise and probably lash out at the 3 justices he appointed and maybe Roberts as well. But everybody knows that he's sick and he's in decline. And their argument just isn't logical. It doesn't make any sense. And, I'm not naive, but I'm not also completely cynical. He's probably going to lose the tariff case. He's lost several other cases in the Supreme Court leading up to this. The media makes it sound like he wins everything. He does not. So, I mean, you have to be careful. The Supreme Court certainly has its issues. And I don't trust them, whatsoever. But I don't think they're going to do the wrong thing here. I think they already indicated the way that they're going to vote when they heard this the first time, and then they ruled that, the district court just improperly put a nationwide injunction rather than ruling on the case. So I just don't think it's going to go his way. I think they're going to send a strong message, the Page of Wands. And I think by the time this probably comes about, we have new leadership. And the issue is probably, because the opinion is probably not going to come out till June. I think it'll be well-written, well-reasoned, and I think it keeps families together. That's the most important part, the 4 of Wands. So I don't think that they're going to strike down birthright citizenship. I know it's popular to fearmonger, and I think that's the right word. I hope you never think I do that, because I certainly don't want to be thought of that way. People say things all the time to get attention, to get views, to get likes. And it's popular to rail against the Supreme Court. And we can certainly do that. They've made a lot of bad decisions, but I don't think they're gonna get this one wrong. I guess depending upon your ideology, because I'm not sure where the American people fall on the spectrum. I don't know that it's completely on party lines, but probably pretty on party lines. Okay, so see, where to go here? Are we going to get more from the Epstein files and the DOJ that is alarming? I always thought they would suppress the worst of it, but the Virgin Islands, that release of information, Lawrence O'Donnell did a piece on it. I mean, basically was describing kidnapping, holding people hostage, and this is the person that Republicans in the DOJ were defending. So I don't know. I just don't think this goes well for them. I think this is kind of the thing that helps to bring him down, not in a legal sense, but in just a spiritual and end of life cycle sense. Big surprises are coming. The Knight of Wands, big surprises. Will his name appear? Yes. Will it appear, like he was personally involved in some kidnapping? I don't think so. I don't think they would ever let that happen. Was he? I'm not so sure. Did he know about it? That's the more interesting question. Was he complicit in not reporting it? That's a more interesting question. So, like right now, if you're an educator in this country and somebody comes to you and says that some sort of sexual assault or sexual harassment has been committed against them, you have to report it. It is the law that you have to report it. There's certain mandatory reporters, counselors, for example. If a patient describes incest, they have to report these things because that's the law. Now, the Department of Education has watered down that. It's not as strong as it was when Biden was president, but it's still the case that these things are reported. So there's going to be a number, this has been the law for 10 years or so probably. Going back to Obama, I think, is when the mandatory reporting started. But my point is there's generations of people that have grown up with this as being the rule of thumb, that you report any crimes, and that's the law. And so if the felon knew about it and was complicit, I think people under the age of 40 have a very different vantage point on this. I think they see that as a crime, because it would be if this was their high school counselor or their teacher or whatnot. So, and they know that. They're very well of the way Title IX was interpreted in the past. So let's see. Are we going to get meaningful information out of the Epstein files? I don't think so. The hermit card, isolation, being alone, introspection. I think they're trying to figure out how to release them so that bombs don't land in the wrong places. But we're going to get something. I mean, 2 nights in a row, we're going to get something. Can we trust what we're given? I mean, no, of course not. We can, for entertainment purposes only, Pam Bondi is a liar. It is not a debatable fact. There is proof of it. She said they were going to release the Epstein files. Then she said they didn't even exist. I don't think we can trust the DOJ, but that's okay. Other countries have this information. There's more reports out of there. Of course, the Virgin Islands, where Epstein Island is going to probably has more information too. The voters want it. Whether they get it or not, that's a different story. The 4 of Wands. There's a lot of support around releasing them. Of course, this was passed essentially unanimously through the House and the Senate with 1 no vote in the House under duress. This is about an election. That's why it was unanimous. It's not about anything else. It's not that they suddenly care. Yes, there are things in the files about trafficking and the people that helped cover it up. Do I think the felon was involved in covering it up? I kind of doubt it. It doesn't really fit his MO. Did he know about it? That's the question that needs to be asked. Did he know about it, and was he complicit in not reporting a crime? Now, was that a crime at the time to not report a crime? That's a different question. I don't think so. So it's clearly, I think, for entertainment purposes only, the felon was involved in some very horrible things, right? I'm not saying that he wasn't. I just think the DOJ is going to make it look like he wasn't guilty of anything. So we get death down here in the lower left. They're going to delay. It's like they'll release a batch holding back the juicier stuff. And then when Congress says, oh, this isn't all of it, then they'll release some more. Oh, we suddenly found this. It's really, I don't have much faith. I mean, it's inevitable that people blame Republicans for this. The information not being released, people not being prosecuted. People are going to blame Republicans. And we get victory. So at the end of the day, does the felon get his just due in a legal sense? I kind of doubt it. I certainly don't feel that. I've certainly never seen any images to describe that. I've certainly just think that, this comes first. And so therefore it just, it's more of a karmic thing. But are there others? We've already seen Larry Summers resigning and being banned from things. Prince Andrew being ripped of his title. There will be others. To what extent, I don't know. Will the relationship between the felon and Epstein be exposed completely and fully? I think so. I just don't know that it happens fast enough, or you can pinpoint something exactly on him. And I, don't get me wrong, I think he's guilty of things. Again, that's just my psychic impressions, but I just think that he was probably pretty good at covering his tracks. That's all. I'm just going to leave it at that. But I think he's guilty of very dark things for entertainment purposes only. And again, just my impressions of what's going on. I think, the DOJ will be isolated here because I think there are circles of support to get the files out. I think once the felon is gone, the supports grow even more, and we basically get everything Congress asked for. I think there's a lot of damning things in there. I think the people are demanding it, and I think it's inevitable that we learn about all this trafficking. I really do. So that's a good thing. Again, I think there's support to figure out the truth, to get this fresh start with the Ace of Swords and the Ace of Pentacles. I just think that we're going to be disappointed because I just don't think that there's this big smoking gun there. I think there's a lot of associations that imply guilt, but I don't. Or if there is, it's not going to come out until well after he's passed. Okay, so Joe Rogan, Candace Owens aren't stopping harping about this. Neither's Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace. We'll look at her specifically here in a second. And you know what? I think they're sincere. I really do. I think they really do want people prosecuted. I think this is a point of agreement. And I think, 99% of people in this country do not support children being hurt. Is it 100%? Probably not, because there are people that hurt children. So that's why I say 99%, 99.99 if you want. But this is not really a contentious issue. Okay. So are they gonna, Joe Rogan, are they gonna stay on this until all the stuff comes out? I think so. The Six of Swords, they're moving forward. One, they found their audience likes them talking about it. That helps. This will be the downfall of the felon. It might happen after his passing, so but his reputation is already, he's at the lowest approval rating he's ever had. In both the first time he was president and this time. So people already are done with him, right? This is just going to further that. It's going to take it from 36 down to 30. Maybe he even ends up in the 20s before he goes. It's possible. Unlikely, but it's possible. I mean, Bush did. George Bush Jr., his approval rating went all the way to the 20s. Of course, none of us could afford to eat, so that was part of the problem there. But, well, not none of us, but a lot of us couldn't. And gas was like $5 a gallon, and oof, those days. The strength card, I think just them talking about it every day or every week or twice a month, whatever it is enough to keep this in the public discourse. This topic is not going away. It just isn't. It's going to tear him down, the Five of Pentacles. It's going to there's going to be a dividing line, because even if there's not this big bombshell in the Epstein files, and maybe there is, I don't think so, but maybe there is, there's enough associations there to go, why is this guy hanging out with Epstein all the time? That's not normal. Normal people do not hang out with people like Jeffrey Epstein after things were revealed. And we have that birthday card, so we know he knows what was going on. And yeah, he probably did bad things. I don't know that it's in the files. There might be these pictures that Michael Wolff talked about, but Michael Wolff is a little bit, maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe he's not. I don't have any reason to believe he's not, but, he's not exactly, a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist either. So he doesn't have a history of being trustworthy. And he was also around all this stuff too. So, he's out to make a buck, is my point. The Ace of Pentacles. This is the one thing that broke MAGA apart. And MAGA is broken apart. Here, the Hermit card, isolation, and the Four of Swords, this sick way of thinking, this sick behavior of being associated with Epstein. There's really just no excuse. I mean, I'm not saying that people can't, recover after doing horrible things. Unlikely, but, just hanging around, it just, like on a friendly level, could you imagine doing that? That is the guilt. That is what we're going to see in the files. The Magician, everything's in there. And they're going to hide some of it, the deceit and the deception. They've been thinking about it for a while. There's 4 swords here, the 6, 7, the 4, and the 10. So a lot of planning here. Rogan and Owens, they're going to stay on this, as are some other conservative commentators. This is what breaks MAGA apart, in particular, the cover-up of it. They believe the people in the Epstein files are sick people. I think that's a fair assumption. This is a new beginning, and they're going to run with it because it promotes them. It brings in views. It brings in more people into their podcasts. This is the downfall of the felon, or MAGA, if you want. They will be left out in the cold. It's all hands on deck with them because they're competing to outdo each other because they know MAGA's going away. And, the felon is isolated here. So he's taken a position that's untenable. Yeah, it's just untenable. This tears apart the MAGA movement. It's a lot of sleepless nights. And yes, voters will turn to Democrats. They really will, because they feel betrayed. Who were they betrayed by? The emperor. So I think that really says it all. I just think that that's the case. Okay. So we're going to look at Nancy Mace, and then we'll look at some health stuff. So is Nancy Mace going to resign or resign? Will Nancy Mace resign? She's running for governor, so she's not running for re-election. I don't think she's allowed to run for both because she'd have to run in 2 primaries at the same time. Is she going to resign? Oh, she's got choices. I don't think that it's set in stone what her choice is. I think she sees the writing on the wall that Congress is just so unbelievably toxic that it's hard to deal with. I think she truly is disgusted by Mike Johnson and other Republicans and their behavior towards women. I think all of that's true. I think it's heartfelt. I think she has some mental health issues as well, but I don't think she's telling untruths when it comes to that. I don't think she's made her mind up, the 2 of Swords. She knows that this would be, I think she knows it'd be bad for her governor's run. Because, the truth is you can be in Congress and just not show up, right? You get paid. You can get elected and just go on a 2-year vacation. They can't really do anything. Don't get me wrong, the voters will probably not elect you the next cycle, but then again, maybe they will. So I do think that there's some issues here. She's revealing a deep truth here about Republicans and their treatment of women. The 9 of Pentacles. She has every reason to leave and very few reasons to stay, other than perhaps it'll affect her governor's primary. But I don't think she's going to win the primary anyhow. I know she's the favorite, but I just don't see it. But we'll see. I haven't looked at it, so I don't really, just off the top of my head, the feeling is no. This will be a well thought out decision, the Queen of Wands. And, there's many different possibilities of how she handles it. Maybe she just stops showing up for work. That might be one way to do it. So, okay. She's going to make her choices. I don't think they're made yet. I think she realizes that it's going to affect her political future, and therefore it's complicated. She has every reason to leave and emotionally, like from a mental health standpoint, no reason to stay. And I think she's sincere with the way that the Republicans handled the Epstein documents and their treatment of women. I think every day feels like it's excruciatingly painful for her to go to Congress. I think she feels trapped. She's trying to figure out a way to come out of this with the Queen of Wands energy to where what she's saying is the truth, but also not ruining her political ambitions. That's a tricky one to try to do. So will she resign? I don't think she knows, the Magician. My guess is she resigns, but I don't think she actually has decided. So I think everything's on the table with that Magician underneath. Okay. So the felon was slurring his speech again at a Christmas tree lighting ceremony. He quoted some verses from the Bible. What do we need to know about him slurring his speech? Exactly, the devil card. I think his cognitive functions are having such difficulty because there's so much toxins in his blood, and there's just not enough oxygen getting to his brain. And I think it's worse in the evenings, and this was late at night. Well, not super late, but in the evening. So I just think that's right. So what do we need to know about him slurring his speech? I do think he has a chronic disease. Like we talked about, amyloidosis, something along those lines, if not that very similar. I think they're trying to put up guardrails so that he doesn't be in these situations, but it's getting harder and harder. I think people are looking for him to slur his speech now because it's out there. I think it's worse at night and when he's under pressure. And he's under constant pressure now because he knows the world hates him. That's not a good place to be operating from. Making choices. I don't think he takes his medicines the way he's supposed to either. I've said that for a while. It just feels like he doesn't. The Ten of Pentacles. This is going to be part of his legacy. Is he, just like it was part of Reagan's for a while, that he was in cognitive decline. The only difference was Reagan wasn't universally hated, although there was definitely a lot of people that didn't like him. But it wasn't as universal. Justice, it's hard to balance things. People don't trust anything he's doing now, the Ten of Swords and the Ten of Wands. That's 3 tens. The Ten of Pentacles, the Ten of Swords, the Ten of Wands. These are ends of cycles. That's why we're going to look at his health, and maybe I'm beating a dead horse, but I just don't think it's long. They're trying to put up guardrails, but I don't think he's taking the medicines. This is making things even harder for him. His life is not in balance because of this, and it's worse when he's under stress. The seeds have been planted. Choices need to be that he slurs his speech. They're trying to carefully choose where they put him because they know this is the end. The Ten of Swords and the Ten of Pentacles, the end of the way people perceive him. And that's kind of everything. His approval ratings really probably dropped from a psychological point of view in voters' minds because they don't perceive him as being healthy anymore. The Democrats are going to look into it at some point. And we need to pass some laws, to protect the country from people in declining health running it. Cognitive health, that is. Okay, is he mad that this is a big news story now? Is he mad? Yeah, people are talking about it. The Four of Wands coming out. It's my card for the voters. Is this bothering him that people are talking about his cognitive decline? He just says some crazy things. It's very clear that there's issues here. He's illusional and delusional. I think part of him really does think it's only Democrats that are talking about this, but it's definitely not just Democrats. I think, he feels a sense of loss here because I think he knows cognitively he's just not as sharp as he was. Not that he was ever sharp, because he wasn't, but, when you're starting at this level and it gets worse, that's not good. If you start really high and you just start to go down, you might get away with it a little bit longer, but he didn't start very high. the Ten of Pentacles. I think there's this family history as well with his dad. I think the messages coming forward, the Page of Pentacles, really do bother him. I think it makes him feel quite defensive, the Seven of Wands. Does he know he's in cognitive decline? I think so. Does he, like, on an intellectual level, does emotionally, can he admit that to himself? Probably not. Most people can't. So, you know, I think, you know, it's just nature to think that we're going to get better, right? This is not the case here. I think this is surprising to him that people have turned on him on this issue as well. Again, I don't think that he's taking all the medicines they're asking him to take, or there's a medicine that he's taking that's making it worse. Maybe some of these treatments we talked about last time. The Two of Swords, you know, he really can't control it. And the Hierophant, his higher self, I think it's demoralizing. I think he is somewhat delusional. We have 2 sevens, by the way. He's defending himself, but spiritually this is demoralizing. He probably wouldn't use that word. I don't think he's taking his medicines because I think he thinks that they make him worse. He's defending himself, but he knows there's a family history here. He knows he's declining intellectually. Emotionally is maybe a different story. The messages do bother him. And, you know, the Two of Swords is, you know, there are no good choices here. And this is the surprising beginning that he's having a hard time with. What's his choice? To bow out of the presidency and say, I have dementia or some chronic illness? I don't see him doing that. So he's going to continue on, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. The Strength card, you know, he would be better off if he was just quiet. Messages will be coming out. There's everything we need to know about his dementia is already there. So, or cognitive decline. I think it's actually a combination of a whole bunch of things. I do think he does have dementia, but I think there's also not enough oxygen getting to his brain, not enough, the organs not being perfused, I think is the medical term. And that's causing a lot of issues. I think I just will stick with this deck. Okay, let's just take a quick look at his health this weekend. What do we need to know about his health this weekend? I don't know why I've never pulled cards this for specifically just this weekend, but I feel the need to. This weekend into Monday, I'm including Monday. Oh my goodness. I'm not saying that happens, but that's not the prediction. I'm just saying that is definitely in the environment around. It's getting closer. My images are getting more and more frequent. The dream about Ivana. These are what tends to happen when these things get close. And, you know, his energy's harder to read, though. He's not like Pope Francis. Pope Francis, it was so easy because Pope Francis was ready to go. You know, so it's like surrounded by tulips, you know, it's like he almost picked Easter. Okay. I'd be really surprised if they're not really careful with him this weekend. I think he's going to get another treatment of some sort. So we might not see him on Sunday or Monday, one of those 2 days, possibly today. I'm recording this early on Saturday morning. It's possible. I think the Chariot card here is about erratic behavior. Expect that this weekend. They're probably not taking away his phone, so we might get a bunch of truths or tweets. There just aren't good choices. We're probably going to get some inkling about his health this weekend. It is what it feels about. And it might just be a deranged tweet. It might be more slurring of his speech. It might be something more significant as well. It's something new. I mean, it's gonna open eyes. I think something happens this weekend that really opens people's eyes to the fact that he's sick and that he's on his way out. Lost, the Five of Cups. Not good cards. Judgment. We all know that he's scared of dying. And burdens, and also an end of a cycle. So I think they'll try to keep him safe. I think something does come out about how hard, well, not how hard, but something comes out about, when I said that, I immediately thought about his organs hardening, but something about how, I'm just going to say how hard it is to handle him. That's what I was going to say. So I think loss is close. I think we'll get messages about that. And it'll probably come through some sort of erratic behavior that he does. I wouldn't be surprised if he's receiving some sort of treatment this weekend. Again, there are no good choices. This is a new reality, and he's scared of death. So I just think, these two just go hand in hand, death and judgment. And that's what's going on here. He's got a good medical team, but again, they can't always do everything. The Hanged Man, we're just waiting, still waiting. But, eventually doctors are pretty blunt with people when there's nothing else they can really do. So that might be happening as well. All right. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with another video soon.